Where do you think this is going?
I'm so glad you're asking this, and that is the whole essence of what we care about here, right? Actually, I want to say something because we can often, you could hear this as like, oh, they're just kind of fear-mongering and they're just focusing on these horrible things. And actually the point is, we don't want that. We're here because we want to get to a good future. But if we don't understand where the current race takes us, because we're like, well, everything's going to be fine. We're going to just get the cancer drugs and the climate solutions and everything's going to be great. If that's what everybody believes, we're never going to bend the incentives to something else.
Right.
And so the whole premise, and honestly, Joe, I want to say, like, when we look at the work that we're doing, and we've talked to policymakers, we talked to White House, we talked to national security folks, I don't know a better way to bend the incentives than to create a shared understanding about what the risks are. And that's why we wanted to come to you and to have a conversation, is to help establish a shared framework for what the risks are if we let this race go unmitigated, where if it's just a race to release these capabilities that you pump up this model, you release it, you don't even know what things it can do, and then it's out there, and in some cases if it's open source, you can't ever pull it back. And it's like suddenly these new magic powers exist in society that the society isn't prepared to deal with. Like a simple example, and we'll get to your question because it's where we're going to, is, about a year ago, the generative AI, just like it can generate images and generate music, it can also generate voices. And this has happened to your voice, you've been deepfaked, but it only takes now 3 seconds of someone's voice to speak in their voice. And it's not like
3
banks.
seconds?
3 seconds.
3 seconds.
3 seconds.
So literally the opening couple seconds of this podcast, you guys both talking, we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But what about yelling? What about different inflections, humor, sarcasm?
I don't know the exact details, but for the basics, it's 3 seconds. And obviously, as AI gets better, this is the worst it's ever going to be, right? And smarter AIs can extrapolate from less and less information.
Right.
That's the trend that we're on, right? As you keep scaling, you need less and less data to get better and better accurate prediction.
Right.
And the point I was trying to make is, we're banks and grandmothers sitting there with their, social security numbers. Are they prepared to live in this world where your grandma answers the phone and it's their grandson or granddaughter who says, hey, I forgot, my social security number, or Grandma, what's your social security number? I need it to fill in at such and such.
Right.
Like, we're not prepared for that.
The general way to answer your question of like, where is this going? And just to reaffirm, like I use AI to try to translate animal language. Like I see like the incredible things that we can get, but where this is going if we don't change course is sort of civilizational overwhelm. We have a friend, Ajaya Kotra, at Open Phil, and she describes it this way. She says, it's as if 24th century technology is crashing down on 21st century civilization, 21st century governance, right? Because it's just happening so fast. Obviously, it's actually 21st century technology, but it's like the equivalent of.
It's like Star Trek level tech is crashing down on your 21st century democracy.
So imagine it was 21st century technology crashing down on the 16th century. So like the king is sitting around with his advisors and they're like, all right, well, what do we do about the telegram and radio and television and like smartphones and the internet all at once?
They just land in your society.
Right.
So they're going to be like, I don't know, like send out the knights. It's
With
just
their
like,
horses.
Yeah, it's just
Like, how is that? What is that going to do?
just like, and you're like, all right, so our institutions are just not going to be able to cope. And to just give one example, this is from the UK Home Office, where the amount of AI-generated child pornography that people cannot tell whether it's real or AI-generated is so much that the police that are working to catch the real perpetrators, they can't tell which one's which, and so it's breaking their ability
To respond. And you can think of this as an example of what's happening across all the different governance bodies that we have, because they're sort of prepared to deal with a certain amount of those problems. Like, you're prepared to deal with a certain amount of child sexual abuse, law enforcement type stuff, a certain amount of disinformation attacks from China, a certain amount, you get the picture. And it's almost like, with COVID, a hospital has a finite number of hospital beds, and then if you get a big surge, you just overwhelm the number of emergency beds that you had available. And so one of the things that we can say is that if we keep racing as fast as we are now to release all these capabilities that endow society with the ability to do more things that then overwhelm the institutional structures that we have that protect certain aspects of society working, we're not going to do very well. And so this is not about being anti-AI, and I also want to express my own version of that. I have a beloved that has cancer right now, and I want AI that is going to help accelerate the discovery of cancer drugs. That's going to help her. And I also see the benefits of AI, and I want the climate change solutions and the energy solutions. And that's not what this is about. It's about the way that we're doing it. How do we release it in a way that we actually get to get the benefits, but we don't simultaneously release capabilities that overwhelm and undermine society's ability to continue as it's like, what good is a cancer drug if like supply chains are broken and no one knows what's true and right? Not to paint too much of that picture, the whole premise of this is that we want to bend that curve. We don't want to be in that future. Instead of a race to scale and proliferate AI capabilities as fast as possible, we want to race to secure, safe, and sort of humane deployment of AI in a way that strengthens democratic societies.